All right, today we're going to be covering Daniel chapter 10 and on. In the third year of Cyrus king of Persia, a word was revealed to Daniel, who was named Belshazzar, and the word was true. And it was a great conflict, and he understood the word and had understanding of the vision. In those days, I, Daniel, was mourning for 3 weeks. I ate no delicacies, no meat or wine entered my mouth, nor did I anoint myself at all. For the full 3 weeks, on the 24th day of the first month, as I was standing on the bank of the great river, that is the Tigris, I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, a man clothed in linen, with the belt of fine gold from Uphaz around his waist. His body was like beryl, his face like the appearance of lightning, his eyes like flaming torches, his arms and legs are the gleam of banished bronze, and the sound of his words like the sound of the multitude. And I, Daniel, alone saw the vision, for the men who were with me did not see the vision, but great trembling fell upon them, and they fled to hide themselves. So I was left alone and saw this great vision, and no strength was left in me. My radiant appearance was fearfully changed, and I retained no strength. Then I heard the sound of his words, and as I heard the sound of his words, I fell on my face in deep sleep, with my face to the ground. And behold, a hand touched me and set me trembling on my hands and knees. And he said to me, O Daniel, man greatly loved, understanding the words that I speak to you, to stand upright, for now I have been sent to you. And when he had spoken his words to me, I stood up trembling. Then he said to me, Fear not, Daniel, for from the first day that you set your heart to understand and humbled yourself before your God, your words have been heard, and I have come because of your words. The prince of the kingdom of Persia withstand me 21 days. But Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, for I was left there with the kings of Persia, and came to make you understand what is to happen to your people in the later days. For the vision is for days yet to come. When he had spoken to me according to these words, I turned my face towards the ground and was mute. And behold, one in the likeness of the children of a man touched my lips, and then I opened my mouth and spoke. I said to him, who stood before me, O my Lord, by reason of the vision, pains have come upon me, and I retain no strength. How can my Lord's servant talk with my Lord's? For now no strength remains in me, and no breath is left in me. Again, one having the appearance of the man touched me and strengthened me. And he said, O man, greatly loved, fear not. Peace be with you. Be strong and of good courage. As he spoke to me, I was strengthened and said, Let my Lord speak, for you have strengthened me. Then he said, Do you know why I have come to you? But now I will return to fight against the prince of Persia. And when I go out, behold, the prince of Greece will come. But I will tell you what is inscribed in the book of truth. There is none who contends by my side against these except Michael, your prince. So, today we're going to continue to see the vision of Daniel. We covered another Daniel's vision from previous session, and then he has seen another vision. This chapter 10 is a very interesting chapter and also controversial chapter as well. One of the reasons why this chapter is a controversial is because of verse 1. When you read the verse 1, it says, "In the 3rd year of Cyrus king of Persia, a word was revealed to Daniel, who was named Belshazzar. And the word was true, and it was a great conflict, and he understood the words and had understanding of the vision." When you read the verse 1, there's nothing really just strange about the verse 1. For us, of course, there's nothing strange about this verse 1. But to others, it's a very strange word. So now the question is, what is strange about this? The reason that is very controversial of the chapter 10 verse 1 is because when you go back to Daniel chapter 1, Daniel chapter 1 verse 21 says this, "And Daniel was there until the 1st year of King Cyrus." So the chapter 1 says when the Cyrus of Persia invaded into Babylon and take down the fortress and killed the Belshazzar. So Daniel was still there because Daniel was the master of all the magicians and the other people. So he was there until the last day of the Babylon. So when the Cyrus came to Babylon, of course Daniel was there because Daniel was the one who actually gave the prophecies that the Babylon will be destroyed. But there is a contradiction between the last verse of the chapter 1 versus the first verse of the chapter 10. Because according to the chapter 1 of Daniel, he said that Daniel was there until the 1st year of Cyrus the Great. Chapter 10 verse 1 said, he starts with, "In the 3rd year of Cyrus king of Persia, the word was revealed to Daniel." So now people are talking, wait a second, it doesn't make any sense. Chapter 1 says he was there until the 1st year of the Cyrus the Great. Now the chapter 10 talks about the 3rd year of the Cyrus the Great. What is right? Was he there on the 1st year of the Cyrus or the 3rd year of the Cyrus? Which one is right? Why there is a contradiction within its own book? So there is lots of debate between scholars and the peoples exchanging those messages and trying to figure out which one is right, because many people are asking question, is it a 1st year, the 3rd year? Like, which one is right? Is the Bible correct, or like, is the Bible wrong? What is it? So you could imagine why there is a controversy between chapter 1 and chapter 3, that it actually talks about something and doesn't seem to be lining up. This is one of the reasons why I actually mentioned to many people that when you read the Bible, you cannot read verse by verse. You should not try to interpret just one verse with the Bible. That is the most dangerous way for you to interpret the Bible. You should always have macro view and micro view. And I said this many, many times, and enough that it's actually, ringing in your ears, literally. So for me, there's nothing to really just, argue about or the debate about the chapter 1 versus chapter 10. The reason is, what it appears that Daniel was the master of the magician until the 1st year when the Cyrus, the king, came over to Babylon. And seems that on the very 1st year of Cyrus, it seems like Daniel stopped doing that. He no longer became a lord of all the magicians anymore. Either was forced by the Cyrus, or he actually just left that position. And he no longer was the Lord of all the magicians anymore. He was there as the Lord of the magician in the first year of the Cyrus when he invaded into the world. But he seems like he literally like retired, or he just left that positions that he's no longer really just doing it, but he was there in the Babylon. So when you look at the other chapters that we covered, in the previously, Darius of Medes actually really loved Daniel, took care of him, and he was really upset when other people were jealous. Then he actually just plotted him to be put it into the den of lions. Right? He was still there. That was not the first year of the Cyrus, the king invaded into Babylon. So that explains that Daniel, the book of Daniel, does explain that he was there even after the first year of Cyrus. He just no longer the master or the lord of the magician anymore. So there's a difference between the chapter 1 and chapter 10 is chapter 1 talks about when Daniel was still in the positions to really just, as a lord of the magicians. And chapter 10 talks about when he left that position, he's no longer the managing the magicians anymore, but he was there as just the retirees. So there's nothing to really conflict. There's nothing to really argue. There's nothing to really just debate about the chapter 1 versus chapter 10. Does that make sense? Of course, nobody will actually question this. Even you do not question this, because even if you read the chapter 1 and chapter 10, you still don't know the difference between chapter 1 and chapter 10 anyway, right? The reason that I'm actually bringing this up is because there are people who is trying to maliciously just challenge the book of the Daniel or the book of Bible. They actually pick those things and then challenge the truth of the Bible. When someone challenges those, and I'm just explaining to you what that really means, because most of the people have no idea how to really just answer that question because they don't know, because they never heard about it, right? So I'm just explaining this to you just for your own information. It's not like, oh, I'm struggling because the chapter 10 and chapter 1 is just a conflict thing. It's like, I don't understand. No, that's not why I'm explaining. I'm just explaining for your information for the futures. And if anyone asks you questions, or if anyone brings up, in the Bible sharings or some things that this topic comes up, at least you're equipped with the answers to provide. All right? So we're going to continue on. So Daniel saw the vision, and Daniel was moaned for 3 weeks, and he was really literally just, not eating any food, no food. He wasn't eating any delicacies, or no meats or wines enter into his mouth. So he was literally fasting. Nor did I anoint myself at all. So he didn't really just make himself a little just, a shine. He was literally, put on a sackcloth. On the 24th day of the first month was as I was standing on the bank of the great river, that is the Tigris. So let's talk about this for a moment. He was specifically mentioning the day that he actually saw this vision, which was the first month and 24th day. So the first month, 24th day. So in order for us to understand this better, we have to understand the Jewish religious feast. Israelites, according to the law of Moses, they keep all the law of Moses. And one of the things they have to keep is 7 feasts. 7 feasts is the first is, remember, what is it? What is the first feast? So let's go to Leviticus chapter 23. Leviticus chapter 23. Leviticus chapter 23 talks about all 7 feasts. The very first feast is Passover. And Passover is only one day, not even a one day. Just the first month, on the 14th day, is the day of Passover. That evening, that midnight, they have to eat the 1-year-old lamb you have to eat. So the Passover, the first feast, and after the 14th day, the 15th day starts with the Feast of Unleavened Bread. That's the second feast. Within that, when you look at the chapter 23, 11, and he shall wave the sheaf before the Lord, so that you may be accepted. One day after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it, which means on the day between the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So as I mentioned, Passover is only one day. The first month on the 14th day is the Passover, that midnight. And Feast of Unleavened Bread starts from the 15th. And they have that feast for 7 days. So within that period, there is the Feast of a First Fruit, which is the day after the Sabbath. One day after the Sabbath. Right? So, 14th day, 15th day, and then we have the Feast of First Fruits. So all that happens on the very first month. So, Passover one day, 7 days of the Feast of a First Fruit, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and the Feast of First Fruit. So, when is the last day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread? When is the last day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread? '22. Right? 22nd of the first month is the last day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Right? So when you think about it, when Daniel had this vision, it was the 24th day of the first month, which means right after all the first month feast is over. He just completed all the feast of a feast on the first month. On the first month, there are 3 feasts, as I mentioned: Passover, Feast of Unleavened Bread, and third, Feast of First Fruit. And then this is what happened on the first month, and a third month, there is the Feast of Weeks on the third month. There's only one feast on the third month, right? That is also we call the Feast of Weeks, as well as we also call the Pentecost. That's the same day, right? Because from the day of the first fruit, you count the 7 weeks. You count for 7 weeks. 7 weeks is 7 days in a week. 7 times 7, 49 days. And the day after the 49th day is the 50th day, is the Pentecost, and the Feast of the Weeks. That's on the third month. And after that third month, there is another 3 feasts on the 7th month, which is Tishri month. Tishri month also has 3 feasts. First feast is Feast of Trumpet, right? The Feast of Trumpet is on when? 7th month on the first day. Right? 7th month on the first day. and a day of atonement, which is the 10th day of the 7th month. So, Feast of Trump is 1 day. Also, Day of Atonement is also 1 day. And the last feast is the Feast of Booths, which starts from 15th and then runs for 7 days. And the last day is the 8th day, which is the big days. Right? So when you think about it, first month, Passover starts from the 14th, and the Feast of Unleavened Bread starts from 15th. And 7th month, also the Feast of Booths starts from the 15th of the 7th month, runs for 7 days, and 8th day is the day it ends, the Feast of Booths. So always keep that in mind, and I explained very detailed what this feast means when I was covering the Leviticus. And the people who actually heard and learned the Leviticus, you understand how much I spend to explain what that feast means. Because the feast has significance of the work of the Jesus Christ, from the death on the cross throughout the entire journey. That includes the day of Pentecost, which is the kind of feast that we're going through today. And there are 3 feasts that hasn't come yet that will happen in the future, which is the 7th month, which is what happened? Feast of Trumpet, Day of Atonement, and the Feast of Booths. And what that means, I already explained. So if you have not studied the Leviticus, and at least if you are interested to learn about it, you can go back to Leviticus and then listen to those recordings to have a better understanding. So, coming back to Daniel. So, first month on the 24th, which is right after 22nd day, is the day that it ends the feast of the first month. And in 23rd, he's rested, and 24th is the day that he had this vision. What he saw, and I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, a man clothed in linen with a belt, a fine gold with uphawse around his waist. His body was like beryl, his face like the peering of lightnings, his eyes were like flaming torches, his arms and legs are like gleam of burnished bronze, and the sound of his words like the sound of a multitude. When you read this one, it's just a little weird of the appearance that he has seen. Is it looked like someone he has seen with majesty, glory, is what he sees. It seems like this person, or the thing that he has seen, is very similar to what you could see in Revelation. So when you go to Revelation chapter 15, Revelation chapter 15, I'm going to read from verse 5. After this I looked, and the sanctuary of the tent of witness in heaven was open, and out of the sanctuary came the 7 angels with the 7 plagues, clothed in pure, bright linen and golden sashes around their chest. And one of the 4 living creatures gave the 7 angels 7 golden bowls full of the wrath of God who lives forever and ever. And the sanctuary was filled with smoke from the glory of God and from his power, and no one could enter the sanctuary until the 7th plague of the 7 angels were finished. So, when you look at the verse 6, And out of the sanctuary came the 7 angels with the 7 plagues, clothed in pure bright linen and golden sashes around their chest. It's not exactly the same, but it's a very similar in appearance of what Daniel has seen. Some people interpreted that what Daniel had seen in chapter 10 is appearance of the Christ, appearance of Jesus. I have a slightly different opinions about this because, as I can see in the book of Revelations, when the angel came out, their appearance was like this in chapter 15, which means what we are seeing in chapter 10 is also seem to be angel, not the appearance of the Christ or Jesus. So there are people who interpreted this particular, the sections or the things that they have seen is the appearance of the Christ, but I interpret it a little bit different based on what I can see in the Revelation. And I will give another reason why I don't see this as a Christ. And I, Daniel, alone saw the vision, for the men who were with me did not see the vision, but the great trembling fell upon them, and they fled to hide themselves. So they did not see what Daniel saw, but they heard something that were fearful, they were afraid, they were fleeing away from Daniel, which is very similar to the experience that Paul, the apostle, had experienced. When he was going up to Damascus, right, there was a light shining upon him, and he heard a voice of Jesus Christ. Other people did not hear, but they trembled. Same thing. Only person who saw the vision was Daniel, not other people. But they were fearful. They experienced something miraculous thing, so they were so fearful they just ran away. But he stayed there. Daniel stayed there. So I was left alone because everybody fled, and saw this great vision, and no strength was left in me. My radiant appearance was fearfully changed, and I retained no strength. Then I heard the sound of his words, and as I heard the sound of his words, I fell on my face in deep sleep with my face to the ground. So, as I mentioned, when he saw the vision, imagine when you see like so much of a glory, like you become like so small and you become like so weak. Like he was just trembling before that, the things that he has seen. Because it's nothing like what he has seen. Remember, Daniel was in Babylon, most glorious the country at the time, right? And he was very close to the king. So imagine, what are the things that king of Babylon or the king of, the Persia would have in their palace? It's like literally everything was covered with gold and some of the glories, and he has seen much of the glory of the greatest, the king of all time. But what he saw was not even compared to what he has ever seen. This is nothing like what he has ever seen, even though he has seen the most glorious thing in the world. But what he saw in his vision is not even compared to what he has ever seen before. So that's why he just became so weak, and he just bowed down before and just literally flat out on the ground. And behold, the hand touched me and set me trembling on my hands and knees. And he said to me, "O Daniel, man greatly loved, understand the words that I speak to you, and stand upright. For now I have been sent to you." So someone sent him. Whatever he saw, someone sent him to really just appear before Daniel to speak to him. So this is one, and the second reason why I don't believe that what he saw was not Christ, because someone sent it, right? Oh, Daniel, I'm sorry. And when he had spoken this word to me, I stood up trembling. Then he said to me, Fear not, Daniel, for from first day that you set your heart to understand and humbled yourself before your God, your words have been heard, and I have come because of your words. So what it means is that Daniel was praying. That prayer has reached, and God heard your prayer, and I was coming back to you to provide the answers or provide the response from the Lord to what you have prayed. So this gives us some of the things and ideas that it really teaches us, that when we pray, prayer is not something we just mumble ourselves. It is not something that, God does not hear. God does hear our prayer. Of course, there is a certain prayer that is received by the God. There's a certain prayer that's not received by the God. So imagine, if Daniel was praying, what do you think Daniel was praying? Do you think the prayer of Daniel was like, oh Lord, please just reinstate my job so that I become the master of all the magician? Do you think that's what he was praying for? Oh Lord, what I have, it is not enough, but can you just abundantly bless me so that I can actually continue to expand my wealth? Do you think that's what he was praying for? That's not what he was praying for. What do you think he was really praying for?
His people.
For his people and for the things that he was experiencing. Right? He was not really praying for his own wealth or his fame or his glory or his honor. That's not what he was praying for. Right? But think about it. When you compare it against some of the prayers that you hear all the time, from people, most of the prayer requests that you receive, what are those prayer requests that we receive commonly? Someone's either getting sick, we pray for their sickness. Someone is in trouble, so we actually just pray that their situations will get better, right? Someone is actually trying to get a job or just going to a schools or they just literally waiting for the decision of something. We just pray that they will receive the answer from that, right? So get either acceptance of the job, acceptance of the schools, or mostly those are things. When you're actually in trouble with the financially or economically, and you pray that your economical situation gets better, right? Those are the most common things that we get requested for prayer. How many people do you think that is requesting to you or have heard from your prayer group or whoever, and they say, Lord, can you just pray for me so that I have a better understanding of the Bible, so that I can actually have a better knowledge of a Christ? Can you just pray for me? Is that what should mostly hear? That's not what we mostly hear. We typically hear for our own, goods, right? But Daniel's prayer was not like that at all. He was really concerned about about this country, and also for his own people. So his prayer was definitely what God was looking for. So let's just turn to James chapter 4. James chapter 4, we're going to read from verse 1. What causes a quarrel and what causes a fight among you? Is it not this, that your passions are at war within you? You desire and do not have, so you murder. You covet and cannot obtain, so you fight and quarrel. You do not have because you do not ask. You ask and do not receive because you ask wrongly to spend it on your passion. So what is the James is saying? You're praying, but you're not receiving. Why? Because you're only praying for your own passion. What that passion is not about his own people, not about his actually, the belief, but what his passion is, what I want. What I want to achieve, what I want to get, those are the things that James is talking about. That's not why you're not getting what you're asking. Number one, you don't even ask. Well, if you don't ask, you don't get it. Two, if you only ask for your own goods, well, God may grant you or God may not grant you because there is no promise. As I mentioned, when we pray, how should we pray? And as I mentioned, you have to hold on to God's promise because the Bible is about promises. That God made us so many different promises to us, right? So, what do we hold on to? Should we hold on to, Lord, you promised me that you're going to make me rich, so bless me so that I can be rich? Lord, bless me so that I can actually get my numbers of a lottery number gets right so that I actually get blessed for $1 million or the $10 million or whatever. You promised me. When did God promise you that your lottery number will win? There's no such promise. That's not promise God made. And first of all, people do not know what God promised. Why? Because they don't know Bible. If you don't know the scriptures, then how can you know what God promised? Then if you don't know what God promised, then what do you really just hold on to? So this is one of the reasons why we have to know the scriptures in order for us to really pray right. What is God looking for? What types of prayer that God is really listening versus the prayer that God does not listen? That doesn't mean we should not pray for, other people's, our brothers and sisters of sickness and my family's, sickness. We should. We should pray for those. But they cannot be prayer for everything what we do. There has to be some other prayer too. So, coming back, soon as he prayed, God listened and God sent me to you to really tell you. Verse 13, the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. But Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, for I was left there with the kings of Persia, and came to make you understand what this to happen to your people in the later days. For the vision is for the days yet to come. So it took 21 days for his prayer got answered. When he came to Daniel, it took 21 days because the prince of Persia resisted him. According to what he's talking about, it cannot be something the generals or the armies of this Persia, because it is not physical fight they were having. Because what Daniel has seen was a spiritual being, not a physical being. So it cannot be physical army or the Persian really fought against this spiritual being. So he's probably talking about some spiritual, the war between this this world. So he came to him 21 days. So if it was the 21 days, that means when you're actually going back to 21 days, his prayer was even before the day of Passover. Because the Passover starts from 14th day of the first month. So if 21 day had passed, That means he prayed even before the Passover, right? But the answer he got was after the feast. When he had spoken to me according to these words, I turned my face towards the ground and was mute. And behold, one in the likeness of the children of man touched my lips. Then I opened my mouth and spoke. I said to him who stood before me, O my Lord, by reason of the vision, pain have come upon me, and I retain no strength. How can my Lord's servant talk with my Lord's? For now no strength remain in me, and no breath is left in me. Again, one having the appearance of the man touched me and strengthened me. And he said, O man, greatly loved, fear not, peace be with you. Be strong and of good courage. And as he spoke to me, I was strengthened and said, Let my Lord speak, for you have strengthened me. Then he said, Do you know why I have come to you? But now I will return to fight against the prince of Persia. And when I go out, behold, the prince of Greece will come. But I will tell you what is inscribed in the book of truth. There is none who contends by my side against these except Michael, your prince. So there are several places in the Bible that talks about Michael. There are a few very special the angels that we hear in the Bible. There are two angels that we know that are very specials in the Bible. One is Gabriel. Gabriel is the one who always delivers God's message. And this spiritual being that Daniel has seen seems to be Gabriel. And there is another angel that we hear, which is Michael. Michael is another angel, but this Michael is a little bit different. Whenever there is a Michael, there's always war. Michael is like a general, and he is above the angel. So he is the prince of the angel, which means he's not the same level as the normal angel, but he's above that angel. So he's archangel. He's above that. So we hear about Michael in Daniel. Where else did you see the Michael? Do you remember where you saw Michael in the Bible beside this Daniel? We actually see him. Let's go to Jude. Jude, obviously there's only one chapter, so there's no really... Jude is right before Revelation. Verse 5 and on. Now I want to remind you, although you once fully knew it, that Jesus, who saved a people out of the land of Egypt, afterward destroyed those who did not believe, and the angel who did not say within their own position of authority, but left their prospered dwelling, he has kept in eternal chain under gloomy darkness under the judgment of the great day. Just as Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding cities, which likewise indulged in sexual immorality and pursued unnatural desire, serve as an example by undergoing a punishment of eternal fire. Yet, in like manner, these people also, relying on their dreams, defile the flesh, reject authority, and blaspheme the glorious ones. But when the archangel Michael, contending with the devil, was disputing about the body of Moses, he did not presume to pronounce a blasphemous judgment, but said, "The Lord rebuke you." But these people blaspheme all that they do not understand, and they are destroyed by all that they, like unreasoning animals, understanding instinctively oozed to them. For they walked in the way of Cain and abandoned themselves for the sake of gain of Balaam's error and perished in Korah's rebellions. So now we hear about Michael. But in this book, the Jude, Michael is referenced as archangel. This is the only place that we actually hear about the archangel. Nowhere else in the Bible talks about archangel. Michael is the only spiritual being that is called archangel, or the prince of the angel. We also find Michael in Revelation as well. So when we go to Revelation chapter 12, verse 7 says, "Now war rose in heaven, Michael and his angel fighting against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back." Once again, wherever we find Michael, there is a war. So that we know that Michael is not a typical angels that we know. Whenever we hear about Michael, there's always a war. So we kind of guess that Michael is some kind of general, and he's the archangel. He's the one of the leading the angels to really fight against the evil forces. And Gabriel, never mentioned as archangel, but we hear about Gabriel whenever God sends the message to a man, right? So Gabriel also has a special role. Whenever God sends the message, he's the one who actually delivers the message to the man, to Mary as well. So archangel is very special, and it is just a little bit above the angel, so that we can see there is a level, even in spiritual being. As I also mentioned, archangel, so looks like Michael is above the angel level, but at the same time, he could not fight against the evil. Why can he fight against the evil? Instead of he's fighting against the evil, but he says, "I hope that God rebuke you." He's only saying, "I hope that God rebuke you." He's not fighting against the evil forces. Why? Because the evil once was cherub. Cherub was a higher being than archangel. So there are multiple layers. So that's why even evil was, thrown into this to the earth. He was the best of the cherub. So that's why he could not really fight against the evil. Later he does, but we can see based on what we're reading, there's a level even within the spiritual world. So now this angel came to Daniel to speak to him about what? About things that will come, the things that he doesn't know. So what is he going to talk about? Now, let's go into chapter 11. And as for me, in the first year of Darius the Medes, I stood up to confirm and strengthen him. So once again, the story and the vision is going back and forth, the time when he was in Babylon and when the Babylon king was ruling. And then he talks about the days of the Cyrus, and he also talks about the day of the Darius. So he's going back and forth because the visions that he has seen is not at the same time. It was actually the vision was appeared to him in a different time. So when he was still in Babylon and Darius the Medes was actually ruling that or governing that Babylon, which means the Babylon is already been destroyed, and now Medes, the Darius, was ruling that the region. And now I will show you the truth. Behold, 3 more kings shall arise in Persia, and the fourth shall be far richer than all of them. And when he has become strong through his riches, he shall stir up all against the kingdom of Greece. Then mighty king shall rise, who shall rule with great dominions and do as he wills. And as soon as he has arisen, his kingdom shall be broken and divided towards the 4 winds of heaven, but not to his prosperity, nor according to the authority with which he ruled, for his kingdom shall be plucked up and go to the other besides these. So, once again, Daniel saw the vision, which is what will come. So he's talking about the things that he has seen, but something that he doesn't know because he never experienced it before. This is something new to him. So he's trying to figure it out exactly what this is. So since he's prophesizing the things that he has never experienced or he never seen, now he only talking about what he has seen, but he doesn't really understand what is going to happen. He only knows this is what I have seen, but I don't know what else I'm going to see. So let's think about it. He said, now I will show you the truth. Behold, the 3 more kings shall arise in Persia. So who is the first king? Cyrus. Cyrus the Great is the first king of Persia, right? So he is now seeing the first king. Now, he said, 3 more kings shall arise in Persia. So who are those 3 more kings? After the Cyrus the Great, after Cyrus the Great was killed, as a matter of fact, did I ever mention how Cyrus the Great was killed? I never mentioned about the death of the Cyrus.
You probably don't remember.
That's very true. That's very true. So, let me just talk about just simply how Cyrus the Great died. Obviously, Cyrus the Great was the great king, and the reason why Iranian sees the Cyrus the Great is the most admired and honored king of all his generation is because what he has done. I want you to know that the rights of a human really came from him. He's the one who set that up initially. Human rights. It is originated from Cyrus the Great. And he had done so many good things about, governing the countries and all the territories that he was governing. And he was a great king. But he was very, very ambitious. He never stopped really just expanding his land. So he decided to really just continue to expand his territory or the land. Then one day he decided to just invade it into Scythia. Scythia is, you could think of it as today's Russia. Okay? But Russia is really big countries, right? And Russia is just not one country, right? There's many, many different countries in that region. So Mongol, right, and Kazakhstan, it's all part of the Russia. So you can think of it as it's the northern east of the land that he was actually trying to invade into it. So let me see if I have some map that I can share. Let me see if I have any map. No, not this. Yeah, it's not a great map, but let me see if there's other map that I have. Yeah, I don't have the exact map that I want to show you, but I'm going to show you a different map. Do you see the map? It's a little small, so I'm not sure if you can really see this. Let me try to see if I can blow this up. Oops. Do you see the map? So what you see in this map is literally the orange color of what you see is the Persian Empire and how the Persian expanded their land and areas. So I don't know if you can see this. It's very difficult to see. This you could probably can't see. This is called the Scythians. This is where I'm talking about. This is where he invaded into the land that he was trying to expand. The way he did was Cyrus at the time was trying to, instead of having a fight with that area, so you can think of it as the people of Kazakhstan or the Mongolians, they're not like, they're not really Russians, they're not really Asians, but like a mixture of in between, right? And they're like that. And they were really, really wild because their country was not really developed well, right? So the way that Cyrus the Great wanted to really take over that the land was not to fight against them, but rather what he did was he actually offered in marriage to the queen of that area. But the queen saw this request of the marriage saw as invasion. So she declined the offer. So when Cyrus received the decline or the refused the offer to get married, obviously Cyrus was not too happy. And that was one of the reasons why he wanted to just take over the land. But since he got rejection, he's he didn't feel good. So he decided to actually just invade it into to this area so that he can just fight against them. But what happened was when he actually invaded into to this area, he brought all his armies with him, and there was a river that they had to cross. Before they actually crossed the river, they were actually discussing internally, what should we do if we actually cross this river, and while we're crossing the river, when they attacked us, there are a good chance that we may lose this battle. So Cyrus sent a letter to the queen. The queen's name was Tomiris. Tomiris' queen received a letter from Cyrus and saying, no, actually, not the Cyrus that sent the letter. Tomiris has sent the letter to Cyrus, I'm sorry. So Tomiris has sent the letter to Cyrus and saying, you're going to cross the river. We are going to we're going to pull back. We're going to pull back the fighters away from the river. So you come, cross the river. We will not attack you. If you're the man, really just to have the warrior mind, you come to me, and we will fight against you. So we're going to pull back. You either come to us, we're going to pull back, we're going to fight against you, or you pull back, so we go across the river. Either way, if you're the man, you either come, cross the river, we're going to pull back, or you pull back, so we cross, so we fight against each other. And Cyrus received a letter, and he was discussing with his generals and said, what should we do? Should we go across the river, or should we just have them cross over? And Croesus, which is remember the king of Lydia that I mentioned, that the Asia Minor, that he was the Cyrus about to really fire, put him on the fire, but he was just so brave that he actually just had him to come under him. And Croesus was old, and he was really he was a strategist, and said to Cyrus, the king, we have to go across the river. we don't want to have them come across, because if we have them come across the river, and for any even though it's the slightest chance that if we lose this battle, they're going to just like come directly to our city and destroy us. So therefore, we have to go across the river and fight against their land instead of having them come to our land. And Cyrus is listening to Croesus and I said, that makes sense. All right, so we're going to respond back to this to Tomyris, and then he wrote the letter. Pull back. We're going to go across the river. So he actually go across the river, and then Cyrus had a good idea. And he said, you know what? In order for us to really win this battle, we're going to just do it the great strategy that we have. What we're going to do is we're going to just fight against them. And then what we're going to do is we're going to, as if we were just fighting and then we're losing it, and then we're going to start to pull back. What we're going to do is we're going to leave nicest and delicious food and the really strongest wine or the liquors so they can actually eat and drink when they're completely drunk. We're going to attack them. So what the Cyrus did was he actually just invaded into the land, and then he was fighting, and then as if they were fighting and losing it, and then he was pulling it back. So they were so happy that they were actually won the first battle. So when they actually came to the Persian camp, they left delicious food and meats and the strong liquors. So they were so happy. They were just eating the food. They were drinking. They were enjoying the first victory that they had. So they were so excited. And while they were enjoying the feast and the first victory against the Cyrus, the army, they were completely drunk. And then when they were completely drunk, Cyrus came back to the camp and they captured them all. So Cyrus was very happy because his strategy really worked. But the problem was, there was the prince of that land, which was a son of Tomyris, was captured. And he said, let me lose. And Cyrus let him lose. And then at the blink of a moment, he literally killed himself because he could not stand the situations that he was in, that he lost a battle for his own country. So he literally just killed himself. And of course, the news reached out to Tomyris. Tomyris was literally furious because his son was killed and he suicide, and she lost the first battle. And when the news reached to Tomyris and her, the armies, they were so furious. And Tomyris wrote the letter to Cyrus. I thought the Cyrus was the man, and I thought you were the warrior. You don't fight like this woman in this battle. If you're really a warrior, fight with me. Sword to sword. Fight against me. Not this stupid strategy that you just played. If you're the man, come with me. Fight with me. So Cyrus was so furious. So what? Woman is telling me I'm a chicken? And Cyrus, let's say, he was literally fumed. And he said, the guys we capture, let them lose. Let them go back. Let them all go back. Let's just do the real fight. And then he let all the Scythians, and he captured and let them loose. And said they were all back to the camp. But when they came back to the Tomyris, and everyone was really, it's we're gonna fight to death. And then Ptolemais said to his own people and to his soldiers, said, "Today we're going to have fight against the Persian. When we fight, even though every one of us die, we will never ever pull back. We're going to fight to death. Even one of our soldiers die to the end, we will never retreat. We're going to fight back with our life." And every soldier was, "Yeah, we're going to fight to Cyrus and Persian, blah, blah, blah." Like everyone was like so excited. And then Ptolemais said, today, we are going to cut Cyrus's death. We're going to kill him today. Cyrus, you come against us. We're going to show you. And you're really thirsty for our blood. I will let you drink our blood. And then everyone was shouting at us, "Yay!" And of course, that night, they really had head-to-head fight against us, Persian and Scythians. Guess what? That day, Cyrus was dead. That day, Cyrus was killed in the battle. And Ptolemais literally cut Cyrus's head and brought back his head and dipped it into the bloody bucket and dip it in and out, and said, "You really thirst for the blood of our people? Drink as much as you can." That story has been notorious in history. And that's how the Cyrus the Great died in the battle. This is actually recorded in history. And if anyone is interested to watch it's not exactly the way it really happened in the history, but there is actually the movie that came out a few years ago about Ptolemais, because not many people really know who Ptolemais is. You probably never even heard of the name Ptolemais. Ptolemais is one of the greatest, the queen of that time and the region. So they spent so much money to really just make this movie about Ptolemais, the queen. So the movie does not really portray it as it really happened in the history, but it's definitely worthwhile to watch it. So if you're interested to watch that movie, I can share it. I can just let you download the movie from my Google Drive so that you can just download and watch the movie. But it's definitely interesting to watch the movie. So that's how Cyrus the Great died in the battle. So, going back to what I was saying before, Daniel said, going back to chapter 11, verse 2, "Now I will show you the truth. Behold, the 3 more kings shall arise in Persia." So now there is only Cyrus the Great is the only king that we know. And there are 3 other kings going to come after him. So what other kings come after him? It's very simple. His son, after death of Cyrus the Great, his son Cambyses became the king. He was the first son of the Cyrus the Great. Cambyses was the first king, and I'm trying to just try to see if I can just explain this to you guys. So let me just give a very brief story of Cambyses. Cambyses was the first king of the Cyrus the Great, and he also had another son, which is the brother of Cambyses, is Samarides. Samarides is brothers of Cambyses. So there's only 2 sons, and Cyrus had 3 daughters. Cambyses was very, very ambitious, and he wanted to grow the land as well, just like his dad did. One day, he actually asked the pharaoh to exchange the marriage to just have a treaty. Literally, Cambyses wanted to have the land of Egypt. So when Cambyses requests in marriage with the daughters of a pharaoh, what Pharaoh did was, are you making requests to marry to my daughter? Okay, I'll send you. So he sent the woman to Cambyses, and Cambyses saw the Pharaoh sent the woman in marriage, and found out the woman that Pharaoh from Egypt sent was a servant girl, not the princess of Egypt. And imagine, Cambyses was furious. You're sending your servant girl to me in marriage to the Persian king? You're dead. You're dead. So then, literally, Cambyses prepared his own the army. We're going to go down to Egypt. So he literally just came down to Egypt. By the time he reached Egypt, obviously at the time, there's no such a thing as the fast way to get to Egypt. They have to travel all the way. So they have to collect all the armies. They have to prepare this, and then they have to come down. By the time he actually prepared to fight against the Egyptians, the Pharaoh, when he reached, the Pharaoh is dead. He was dead. So I wanted to kill him, but he's dead now. He was so pissed off. I wanted to kill him, but he's already dead and buried. What am I supposed to do now? I just came all the way down here to kill him, but he's dead. So literally what he said was, listen, show me where the Pharaoh is buried. I will show my respect to the Pharaoh. So his son led him to the tombs of his father, which is the previous Pharaoh. And when he reached out to the tomb, literally what he did was he dug up the tomb and pulled out the mummies of the Pharaoh, and he tied against his horse. And then literally he just running around the entire city with the pharaohs, the dead pharaohs, behind the back of his horses, and drag it into the city, corner by corner. He was so upset that he wanted to really just to kill him because he's already dead, and he wanted to show to kind of that how mad he was. So imagine how would have actually the Egyptians would have to see this. He was people were so furious after they have seen what the Cambyses did. So while he was there, he wanted to just to kind of travel down and north and east and west and try to just have the to invade it into other regions. And one of the region, which is, you can think of it as Ghana. They actually received a letter for Cambyses, come and show your respect and surrender and show the homage. And the people of Ghana and sent him a bow and said, the children of Ghana use this as bow, and if you're not a child, you should be able to pull this bow, because our children in Ghana pull this bow. So Cambyses received the letter with this bow and saying like, what? Bow? Bring it to me. So they brought the bow to Cambyses. And then Cambyses was trying to just to pull the bow. And then he looked at the bow and said, okay, let me just pull this. And then he pulled the strings and then realized that he cannot pull this bow strings. He was like, he couldn't pull this. And then his brother, Samaritas, then said, brother, what's so big deal about this bow? Give it to me. And the Samaritas took over this bow and he said, it looks like a strong bow. And then he pulled it. He pulled it at once, like, it's look like a pretty good bow. And then at that point, Cambyses was so upset because he was humiliated in front of the people. It's like he couldn't pull the bow, but his brother can pull the bow. He was so upset. He didn't say a word. From that time, he was really upset. And then he said, we're going to invade into Ghana. We're going to just destroy them. He was so upset. He was very emotional person. He was very spontaneous. In order for you to really just to have a war against another, the regions or the people, you need to have a strategy. You have to figure it out how you're going to fight, right? How you're going to supply the food, how you're going to travel. You need to plan a lot of different things before you get into a fight. But Cambyses, because he was a very spontaneous person and he was very emotional, he didn't prepare a thing. And then he just traveled to Ghana, which he doesn't even know where this place is. He doesn't have a map, right? It's not like today. It's like you have the map to look for and exactly how to get there. Like there's no such thing. And imagine, Africa is just really, really hot, and there are a lot of desert. And he pulled all his army to bring all his army to attack the Ghana, but he doesn't even know where that place is. And he traveled, and while he was traveling to Ghana, he literally lost more than a quarter, close to the half of his army died on the in the desert because there's no food, because if there's a regional disease. They're like, the Persian was not prepared to travel for a long journey without food and waters and proper, the preparations to travel that long. So Cambyses literally just lost more than a quarter and close to the half of his army died in the desert. And he was literally furious because he hasn't even gotten there yet, right? And then he just wanted to go there quickly and then destroy them, but he couldn't. And then one day, he was actually told his general and said, no, not the general, to his brother and said, brother, we have traveled all the way down to Egypt here, and we spend so much time in Egypt, and we have a nobody in our city, so we don't want to leave our city empty too long. So why don't you go back to our city, the capital, and then you take care while I'm actually just kind of invaded into this land, and I will come back and join you. And he actually sent his brother back to Persia. While he sent his brother go back to Persia, he actually sent assassinators along with his brother and said, go and kill him quietly. Don't mention to anybody. It's a secret. It's a secret mission that I'm giving to you. Kill my brother. The reason that he killed his brother was because he was humiliated before the people. So he literally followed his brother and killed him, and then he came back. Later, his wife found out. His wife was his sister. And then his sister was literally furious. Why did you kill your brother? And literally, Cambyses actually killed his wife too, his sister. So he killed brother, he killed his wife and his sister. He was a literally crazy guy, right? So then he was to keep traveling and realize that it's just too much to travel. And at the same time, he received the letter from Persia saying that there was a letter came from the king of Persia and saying that you no longer are king of Persia. And he received a letter and said, what do you mean? Who is the king of Persia? I'm the king of Persia. And then he thought there must be a rebellion. We have to go back to Persia. So he pulled back all his soldiers, and he now have to travel all the way back to Persia again. While he was traveling back to Egypt, right? Literally another quarter of his, the soldier died. So he lost great amount of his soldier in the desert. Either food because of disease, because of the heat, because of the water, because of all kinds of things that they did not have enough. Literally, he was so furious. He was always mad. And one day in the morning, he was just getting all his soldiers ready. He pulled his sword and said, "My people, we're gonna fight against all this enemies. We're gonna win." And then he actually pulled back his sword. He was a kind of macho man. Right? He wanted to show how brave he was, he is, and he wanted to show in front of the people how strong he is and how, he's the warrior. And while he was actually pulling back his sword back in, he literally, he put the sword in his leg, on his leg. He was like, yeah, we're pull back. He literally just piercing through his his leg. Literally, on the way back to Persia, he died because of that. He could not recover from that wound that he just inflicted himself. He never made it back to Persia. He died on the way back to Persia. So now, once again, Cyrus the Great only had two sons, Cambyses and Samaritas, right? What happened was now two sons are dead. So there's no more son of Cyrus the Great. So when they actually came back, there's all these generals and the governors of that area and realized that Pseudo-Samaritas, because nobody knew his brother, the Cambyses brother, was killed by Cambyses because it was a secret mission that he sent the assassinator, right? So nobody knew. There are only a few people knew that Samaritas was killed. So since the people who went to Egypt, they know the Samaritas was there with Cambyses, but Cambyses sent back Samaritas back to Persia. That's all they know. So they assumed that Samaritas became a king. But that wasn't the case. There was Maggie, which was the one of the guy who used to work for Cambyses. He actually rebelled secretly. And he actually claimed himself he's the Samaritas. So there was a rebellious act that occurred. So what happened was, they were the officers of Persia. It was kind of weird because this king, the new king, he claims himself and never appeared before anyone else. He was always to keep himself a secret behind a curtain, so no one can see. So there's something strange is happening. So it's a little bit suspicious. Something is going on. So this new king, was actually married to one of the officials of the high officials of the Persia. So his father told his daughter, because his daughter got married to this new king, and he told his daughter and said, "Daughter, come to me. When you go to bed with him, I want you to check something for me. When you go to his bed, I want you to check to see if one of his ears are there. The reason his father actually asked this because there was a guy under Cambyses who once tried to rebel, and Cambyses cut his ears. So I want you to check to see if he has the ears, one side of the ears. And then surely his daughter came back to his, told his father that, Father, he only has one ear. And he realized who he was, which was not Samaritas. It was just a rebel. So what he did was he reached out to some other generals and some other high officials, and secretly just like they had meetings trying to figure it out how to just get this country back in order. So he plotted out with the several members of the people and the high officials, and they did not share that any information with anyone else, because if the secret plan gets revealed, obviously their life is in danger, right? So one day, he plotted with a very selective number of high officials and some of the soldiers, and because they were in a high official, they were able to go in and out of the king's the meeting place. And one night, he actually reached out to that place, and obviously the guard was stopping them, and he said, "What is this?" "Oh, as you know, we need to speak to the king." Because the guard knows who they are, they allowed him to really get into the king's place. And obviously, after they got into the king's place, they killed the king, which was not a king. That was just a rebellious, the king, the Magi's. So he killed the pseudo-Samaritas, and then now there's no king, right? Because all his Cyrus the Great, the king, the sons are dead. So they just discuss among themselves who should be the king, who should be the next king. And they just gather together and said, listen, any one of us, because there are about 7 of those people were gathered, and they were, plotted for all this secret, And then they said, any one of us could rule this kingdom. So what we're going to do is, we're going to just, tomorrow morning, early in the morning, we wake up, we're going to ride on the horses. We're going to run on the field. Whichever one of us, riding a horse in the very early morning together, whichever horse neigh the first will become a king. And Darius the first plotted out. And he actually just planned, and he worked with the horsemen to just make the horse neigh. And then all 7 of them were just riding together on a horse, and the sun was rising up, and as they were riding, and Darius the first, the horse, was neigh the first. And then everyone came down from the horse, and then they bowed down Darius the first, and it said, "The king, we will serve you." That's how the Darius the first king became the king of Persia. So, obviously, I actually talked about Darius the first briefly. Darius the first was the guy who actually literally built the systems that actually have the postal system around all the Persians to really send the message quickly. He's the one who built the postal system that we have today. And he's the one who really paved the granites and marble on the ground to connect all this, the postal office. So when the messenger rides the horse, when the horse, got to the point it was no longer can run, and then there is the postal office. They stop and they take a rest, they switch the horses, then ride it to the station. That's how he was able to really send the message quickly out to all the land of Persia. He was a great king, and he had done so much great things in Persia. That's why in the history it calls Darius the first, the great. That's why we called him Darius the First, the Great. Anyway, cut the story short, and I really need to get to Greece, but I'm still talking about Persia. so like going back. So Darius was the great king, but later on, Darius the First married to the daughter of Cyrus the Great. So because like he wanted to have something that is connected to the Cyrus the Great, but there's a lot of discussions that Darius the First and the Cyrus the Great, they're related. They're not. They're Cyrus the Great's his grandfather, and he's a father. Cyrus the Great's fathers was, and the Cyrus the father was kind of like distance relative. So they're kind of connected together, but they're like, it's not close connected, but they're kind of far distance, relative. But he wanted to marry to a Cyrus, the daughter of the Cyrus the Great, so that it could kind of show that, I am, my kingdom is related to the Cyrus. He wanted to just have some connections to the Cyrus. One day, his wife actually fell off the horse, and the guy who came from Greece, who was actually captured as a captive, and he was actually, had some method to really just to cure the Cyrus the Great's wife, the feet, which is a Cyrus the Great, the daughter. And then because this servant cured Darius's wife, and Darius's wife actually granted him lots of the wealth, just thanking him. And also, he no longer was a servant anymore. He became, the guy who actually just enjoyed the wealth of the stuff that he received from his Darius's wife. And he was enjoying his life. But now, one day, he wanted to go back to Greece, where he came from, and he wanted to show off how well he was living in Persia. So he started to enticing, Darius's wife. Oh, the Greece is a really great country. And it was just to keep telling it, Darius's wife, and it's just, Greece is a great country for you to just invade in. And Darius's wife was literally just poking Darius. You literally inherited my father's land as it was before. Don't you have ambitions to really just increase the land? Why are you not doing anything? And Darius was doing a great work. He was governing, he was managing all this stuff, and he was doing a great job. But because his wife was to keep poking, just like just like us, our husband literally don't have any power. When wife just start to scratching, it's like we just act on it, right? And Darius first was literally the same thing. It was like his wife just keep bothering, like, okay, I'm gonna do something. The first war that he had was war against the Scythians, just like the one that Cyrus the Great had. So this time was different Scythians. The Cyrus the Great was actually fighting against the Scythians, but the Scythian that the Cyrus the fought against was Massagatai, was it was small tribes, but he was actually fighting against the East Scythians. When he was fighting against the Scythians, the strategy that they had was this, very simple. Because they knew they cannot fight against the Persian army. So what they did was, they were like just to gather in a small group, as if there's a small soldiers were gathered. So like there's nothing to really fight against them, right? So when they were gathered, let them, the Persians, to come after them, and they just run away. They don't fight. They just run away. Whenever they reach, they actually burned all the food, the camp, then they just poisoned all the waters. So as they were keep running away from the land to land, but obviously the Persian does not know the area, right? They were just keep running away from them. And as the Persians getting into deeper and deeper inside of the Scythians' land, they realized that their waters, their food is running out, and the weather is cold. So the strategy they played was literally running away from Persian, and they never had a single fight with Persian. But they were just keep going into the Scythian land, then literally all their soldiers dead because of no water, no food, because of coldness. They all froze to death. So Persian, Darius the first invasion into other land, that was the first time ever he tried to expand, and he was miserably lost the battle without having a single fight. Scythians never had a single fight with the Persian, but they won the battle. And then same tactic and strategy that they used, literally, Napoleon used exactly the same tactic. I mean, when the Napoleon was trying to just invade into Russia, Russia did use the same exact tactic that they used with Darius the First. So the first invasion was miserably failed. And he was upset because he couldn't really just do anything. So second time he planned, he was now this time trying to go against the Greek. Just like his wife was keep saying, we need to invade into Greece. So that's when he actually invaded into the Greece. That's the war that we know as the War of the Plain of Marathon. You know the Marathon, right? That's the war that Darius the First had with Greek. And obviously you know that when the Athenians and Greek really fought against the Persian and they won the battle, and the guy actually ran from the battlefield all the way to Athens, and then just reported the news that we won the victory, and then he died. He died right after he sent the message, and that's how the marathon started, right? So you don't know the war of the plain of the marathon, but at least you know the story of the marathon. So once again, he lost the battle again. So the second time Darius the First lost the battle. One with the Scythian, second time with the Greek, they both lost the battle. And Darius the First was preparing for the, avenge. While he was preparing, he died. So Darius the First really was a great king, but he never expanded territory and never won the battle. And after the Darius the First, his son Xerxes became a king. And you heard of the Xerxes, right? If you want to know about Xerxes, you probably know one movie that you heard about. What movie that you know? 300. 300. That's the movie about Xerxes. However, in the movie, the way they portrayed Xerxes was completely wrong. Completely wrong. That's, it's like the way the 300, the portrait of Xerxes as if he was just like a, I don't know, what's the word that I'm looking for? Barbarian, literally, right? It's like he was like not even wearing his clothes, but he was like chaining up himself. Like Xerxes is not like that at all, okay? It's watching the movie is great thing, but please do not learn the history from movie. Okay, even with the movie that I'm sharing with the Queen of the Tomiris, the Queen, and the 300. If you look at the overall story, you kind of get the idea what happened. But please do not learn the history from movies. That's the wrong way to learn history. Okay, But anyway, Xerxes is the king after Darius the First, and he was prepared for the war against the Greece because he realized that he was the one who was actually really upset, and his father, lost the battle against the Greece, so he wanted to revenge the Greek. So obviously, Xerxes is the king who married to who?
Rude. Hold on.
Esther.
Esther, of course.
Xerxes the First is the husband of Esther that we know. Now you can kind of connect the dots, right? Who's who? So that's why I'm actually doing this, because I need to really talk about this chapter 11, which I need to talk about Greece. But in order for me to get to this point, I need to explain the whole history of the Achaemenians dynasty, because that's how the story kind of flows. So Xerxes the First was the king, had the most war against the Greek. Okay? Now, once again, now going back to the story. After the Cyrus the Great, who was the next king? Cambyses. Cambyses II was the king after the Cyrus. And then, who else? Pseudo, Samaritas. Third, Darius the First the Great. And then fourth, Xerxes the First. Now, going back to Daniel chapter 11, verse 2. Now, I will show you the truth. Behold, 3 more kings shall arise in Persia after the Cyrus. So who is it? Xerxes the First is what he's talking about. And a fourth shall be far richer than all of them, and when he has become strong through his riches, he shall stir up all against the kingdom of Greece. He's the one who literally stirred up all his wealth, because he had a pretty big territory, because the Darius the First, he actually managed the wealth of the Persia. And after the death of Darius the First, he was literally preparing to have a war against the Greece. And Xerxes the First was the one who actually caused major war against the Greece. And he became strong. His wealth was there. He was prepared to have a war against it. So there are a few movies that I want you to just watch. Recommend. Once again, you don't have to watch, but if you're interested to know, I'm definitely just have you watched the movie that I was going to share, the movie of the Tomirs, one. Second, 300, and there's a subsequent one, Rise of what is it?
The second part of the...
Yeah, the second part of the 300. Rise of, what is it? Rise of an Empire. The 300, Rise of an Empire. So those 3 movies, once again, I just urge you one more time, do not learn the history from the movie, okay? It is not exactly the same as what really occurred in the history, but at least to give you some ideas what the war is between the Persian and the Greece. So that kind of give you what those wars about, all right? I don't think I can get to verse 3 today, because I need to talk about the other story about the Greece, but today I don't think I can go beyond that. So let's just stop here. All right. So today, once again, I talk about a lot of the human history here rather than actual the Bible. But in order for us to understand the context of this chapters and the visions that Daniel has seen, because it's really tied to what really happened. Even though Daniel had seen this vision before all this happened, and he has not seen it because this happened after his death. But we know this happened because it's recorded in history. So I just want to make sure that you understand not only from the biblical perspective, but also from the historical perspective, how these stories are mapped exactly the way that happened in the history. Okay? So I know it is kind of like, do I have to learn all this history? It's like ancient history. It's just boring, right? I know I'm kind of boring you out, but I'm just trying to just explain to you as simple as possible. I'm cutting all the details, but just to give you the very kind of like chunk in a very high level story what really happened in the human history. Is that helping you?
Oh yeah.
Okay.